Hello and welcome. Good afternoon. A lot of familiar faces from the last event that we had in Amara in April earlier this year. Incidentally, that was also 13th of April and today is 13th of September, when there is some connection there. But a lot of new faces as well, so warm welcome to all of you and thanks for taking your time out on a Saturday afternoon to come and spend some time with us over here. I thought I'd just spend a few minutes, put a little bit of context to today's session, also introduce our esteemed speaker, and then I'll leave the stage with him. We are going through a time of massive change, right? Never before in the world history, I think, the pace of change has been as high as we see today. And at the same time, the world is also going through some unprecedented challenges, whether it's on the environmental side, whether it's on the political side, of course on the economic side. There's been a massive amount of challenges and changes that we are experiencing as of now. And what's also very critical is not only are the things around us changing, but the very basic principles and theories that we thought that govern things around us are also changing massively. Right? I was just the other day at a seminar, which I'm sure many of you would have heard about this, from Nassim Taleb, the black swan theory, which says that basically all the modeling, etc., that we do to predict stuff like that, especially in financial markets and all things, have got no value. Because every big event in the world that has happened in the past, whether it's in the political space, whether it's a war, or whether it's a recession, everything was absolutely undirected and unpredicted. So there is no control over anything that happens. Now, so those are the kind of things that we are going through at the time, and we're kind of left a bit wondering then, where is so how do we really, especially when it comes to guiding our life, not so much at work. Maybe at work and also life outside of work. So what really, then in the truth, what really governs if everything is changing so fast? Right? Somebody said that knowledge is the currency of the 21st century. I think that's absolutely true, and not only for the 21st century. I think knowledge always was and will be the currency for all times in eternity. But then, how do we define that? How do we define that knowledge? Is it just the information overload that we get from a connected age that we live in today? Some of it is not even information, forget knowledge, it's just data, as we all know. Right? So what's that knowledge that we are saying that is the currency that always was, always will be, right? When everything around us are changing so fast. There's another saying which says that when things around us around you are moving very fast, then you grab those things, or things around you which are, when there is more change around you, grab the things which don't change. Right? That's one way of looking at it. And that's where we wanted to bring the broader perspective of knowledge that's available outside of our 24/7 connected age of information or data download. Right? Knowledge which has been timeless, knowledge which has always been there, knowledge which has not changed, which are basically coming from scriptures, of all bona fide scriptures, especially the Vedic scriptures that we many of us have a background of, whether it's Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, etc. That knowledge, unfortunately for many of us, and I can talk about myself about 10 or 12 years back, is something that we had no idea of. And we were kind of grappling around with data download and information as we thought. And we're always getting confused around what's happening because everything is so unpredictable and uncertain. And especially when it came to guiding your own lives. So the idea of this forum, and we started this in September, we had very nice response, and there was a general feedback that we should continue to do such forums, and this has taken a while. So it's the second in that series, and we hope to continue with your support, etc., to do more of that, is to bring a broader perspective so that we can make up our mind for ourselves. But unfortunately, many of us don't have the opportunity to go through that. So to bring that to the audience, what is that knowledge? That probably is the one that's being referred to when we say knowledge is the currency of the future, of all times. So that's a little bit of the perspective we thought why we want to continue these kind of sessions. Let me just quickly introduce to you today our very esteemed speaker. Mr. Siva Kumar. You all who were there in the Amara Hotel would have seen him. That time he was not speaking. We had a sannyasi who was speaking at that time. Mr. Siva Kumar brings a different perspective. He is a person like you and me. He's a practicing lawyer. He has his own firm. He's based in Singapore. But I have seen him now for 6-7 years more closely, and to see somebody practicing something which is as demanding or as you call it intensive or challenging like law, and at the same time bringing the broader perspective into your own life is something that I have seen is very, very amazing. I thought it would be a wonderful idea for him to come and share some of that with us. He's extremely well read in Vedic scriptures. I mean, I have seen him, and he's practicing it himself for 30 years. He's not that old, but he's doing it from a very young age. But it's almost 30 years that he's been doing this. He travels around the world on his own behest to kind of spread this word and spread this knowledge around. I see him traveling more than he's here. And once I thought he was always traveling for his own work in terms of law firm and stuff like that. He told me, no, when I travel, I don't do this for work. That was amazing. This was a few years back. It was such an eye-opening incident. He regularly speaks at places like the National University of Singapore. NUS is a very, very popular speaker with the young PhD students, etc., because of the knowledge that he brings in and the perspective to how we lead our life on that. And he's also the president of a society that we have in Singapore called Gita Reading Society, where we try to bring the understanding of scriptures like Bhagavad Gita into our daily lives. So with that, and without much ado, I would like to welcome Mr. Siva Kumar to spend about 45-50 minutes, an hour with us. If I could just invite Mr. Shah from the Anchor Group to hand him over a second.
I've never received a bouquet in my life. This is the first.
Matching your shirt also.
Sorry?
Matching your shirt also.
Oh, okay, fine. I'm also colorblind, so thank you for it. Sometimes when I tell people that I'm colorblind, they don't believe me. All the matching is done by my good wife, who's not here today. But it's useful being in law, because when you go to law, when you go to court, all you need to do is wear white and black. And if you're not sure, then white and black are technically not colors. You can't see them so well, but it's the only thing I can actually see very carefully. So putting that aside, thank you very much for joining me. If I were to sit down, can everyone see me? Would that be all right with you?
All right.
That's okay? Okay, good. I want to thank Suman Prabhu for getting this going. I want to thank Rajiv Prabhu. I want to thank Sanjay. I want to thank Vishal. They are they are the ones who have taken so much of enthusiasm to try and get all of you together. And I suspect that you probably know one or both or some of them. That's the reason why you probably came. The other reason why you may have come is also because when was this? In April. Yeah, it was in April. In April, we had Bhakti Rasamrit Maharaj, and he gave an amazing discourse on the practical balance between material living and spiritual thinking. So we thought it would be good if we followed up with topics which are closer to heart. And I was given a nice topic today to speak about, and I thought it would be something I can share with all of you. Well, broadly speaking, it's entitled Principles of Satisfaction. And if you take aside principles and the word of, the word satisfaction itself, is something that, frankly speaking, is something that's very, very valuable, very much sought by all of us. And it's something that is becoming a little bit more difficult to attain. If we attain it, it's even more difficult to sustain it. So I'm not going to start on the premise of saying that we want to talk about satisfaction because nobody here is satisfied. That's not true. I think every day we get on with life because we find satisfaction somewhere. Otherwise, it's very difficult to get on with life. But maybe what we will try to offer to you, and this is not from me, but it's from the perspective of very practical scriptures like the Gita and Bhagavatam. Maybe what we can offer you and share with you is a perspective of how we can sustain this satisfaction. And maybe try to understand where this has come from. And I am merely going to be a conduit today in the sense that I can present to you the material concept of satisfaction, which we are more or less familiar with, and I can share with you what is the spiritual or aesthetic or whatever else you want to call it aspect of satisfaction. And then the idea is that you go back and you think about it, contemplate about it. Some of what I say today may gel with you. Some of what I say today may cause objections in your mind. Hopefully it won't be violent. The idea is for you to let your thoughts simmer on these topics. And if you find that they are useful, then we will be happy. That's the idea. Now I'm also going to be very careful with my timing, which is why I put my watch like that. It's an occupational hazard to keep talking. So I have to be careful with that, right? So I know you all will get hungry after a while, and these are just appetizers. They're just meant to give you a taste of what's going to follow. So I will not take too much of your time. And if you get really tired of me, just start looking very dissatisfied. And I will get the idea at some point. Okay, what perhaps is good for us to start with is a dictionary term of satisfaction. I looked up a few over the last few weeks when I was thinking of this topic and in other areas that I speak about. And generally the idea is satisfaction is actually a fulfillment of one's desires, wishes, and it leads to a sense of contentment. That's what the dictionary generally says. What I found interesting is most dictionaries say that satisfaction means to fulfill your desires and your wishes. And sometimes they use the word wants. But very seldom I find satisfaction being defined as a fulfillment of a need. Very interesting. Keep that in mind because we'll come to that afterwards. So that's the first definition I can think of. The other thing that we often talk about in satisfaction is that when you talk about satisfaction, there's always this idea that satisfaction is a platform to happiness and peace. Why be satisfied and not be happy? It's very seldom the combination doesn't work. When you tell someone I'm very satisfied with something, you generally also mean that, you know what, I'm also quite peaceful where I am. You may not have the happiness of a teenager jumping up and down because that doesn't last. But when you are peaceful, the idea is you are satisfied. Now, the other thing that's very important is satisfaction touches on every aspect of our lives. That's the other thing you will realize. Today, if you Google the word satisfaction, you don't get anything on satisfaction per se. But very often you find words like job satisfaction. That always comes through. Marriage satisfaction. That's always there. It's normally elusive, but it's there. And then you have ideas like satisfied with my life generally. So you know then that that's what we're looking for. We want job satisfaction. We want satisfaction in our relationships especially. You know, it just doesn't need to be immediate family. It can be the friends that you make in your workplace. Sometimes that determines job satisfaction. So satisfaction is so relevant. And as Suman just said, when we live in a society where nothing is really for sure, and everybody comes up with a theory, and for a while it sticks, and after a while it goes, and when life is becoming more and more pressurizing, it becomes very difficult to find satisfaction. And when you do, it's very fleeting, right? Satisfaction, you know, she stays for a while and then she leaves. I don't know why I use the word she, but that's just a term of reference. So satisfaction generally is that mood of contentment and fulfillment. So happiness and peace, they go with satisfaction. And the question now is, how do we become satisfied? Or having become satisfied, how do we sustain it? We were just chatting, isn't it? Of how losing weight is all right. But after that, how to sustain the loss of weight, that's the difficult part. The happiness is when you know you have to give away clothes that fitted you for 10 years because you were of a certain weight, and then it goes away. But the question is, you may have to just put it on the shelf for a while because you may not be able to sustain weight loss. And sustaining is everything in this world. Can we sustain satisfaction? Is it possible? In order for us to answer that question, there are two ways for us to look at it. The first way is, let's try and understand what is the material society solution. Society, generally, how does society tell us? We have seminars on satisfaction, job satisfaction, we have seminars everywhere. So what is the idea of how society deems satisfaction? Actually, if you look at all of that, it can easily be put into one phrase. More is good and less is bad. That is generally the mood of today's society. If you tell someone that if you want to be satisfied, then you have to achieve more. You get more of a good thing, and the chances are you'll be satisfied. We work hard, we study hard, we send our children to school, we get all these jobs because we are hoping the more I get, the more I surround myself with these acquisitions, I will be happy because I'm satisfied. That's the idea. So in this world, the idea is very simple. More is good and less is bad. Now, the idea of why this is important actually comes from one very important principle that today's society and all those behind the society has actually got. And that's you and me. And the idea is, man is essentially a creature of desire. We all are. Every moment there is a desire creeping up in our hearts. Right now, even when I look at all of you, ask yourself, is there a desire? When is he going to stop? When are we going to eat? That's a desire, by the way. Or what are we going to do later today? I want to do this, I want to do that. So there is no end to desires. And Bhagavad Gita, right? It's a wonderful scripture. And all the scriptures in the world, they all agree, especially with this idea that we are all creatures of desires. And so does society. In fact, in today's world, we are living in a society that thrives on knowing the psychology of all of us. We live in a society where consumers and those who provide consumers with all the goods and products, they understand that as long as we give you what you want, you will come back for more. That's how it is. So in this world, we have this idea that we continue to run after things because we are told as we grow up that if you have more, you become more happy. So the idea is, if I have a car, well, after a while I should get a better car. Right? If I have a house, well, the idea is I have to upgrade. If I have a shirt, well, the idea is I need a few more. If I have 2 chapatis on my plate, the idea is I should have another 10. And sometimes, the idea, because I do family law, I've been practicing family law, the idea is if I have a spouse, well, after a while, I should get another. So that's how we are. That's how we are. 20 years ago when I was practicing law, people used to come to me, divorced couples or couples about to divorce, and they would sit down and talk to me and say, we want to have a divorce. And when I asked them why, the idea would always be fundamental problems. Either it's abuse, serious abuse, very often serious abuse, or adultery, things like that. And if you read the law books, 500, 600 years ago, even from England, these were always the fundamental problems of marriage. 15 years going down the line. Today, in the last 5, 6 years, first of all, I meet couples who are a lot younger than I am. They're all in their 1980s. They are those who are born in their 1980s. When they sit down with me and I say, what is the reason for divorce? They give me very, very sophisticated reasons. The sophisticated reasons will normally include things like, I don't get along anymore with that person. Or, I just woke up one day and I looked at her and I realized I don't know who she is. Things like that. I speak to her after a few days and I have this sense of hollowness and despair. Very sophisticated reasons. And many of them, their marriages are in their 1.5 years, 2 years range. That's the average in Singapore. Right? Why I'm saying this is, it's obvious that they're not satisfied. And it's obvious when they got married, they were very satisfied. So what happened? What happened? Because we live in a world where society feeds our desires. Without us even realizing, we are encouraged Desire means change. Change means change, more change, more change. And the more you get of something, the better. So that's how we're growing, if you call that growth. So that's the material society. So the society that we live in, we are encouraged to want. And the more we want something, the more we spend. The more we spend, the more society benefits. So that's why it's important. And that's why you have lawyers who are very happy when couples come and say they want to get divorced, because that's another file for us. Straightforward divorce, $2,500, done. If I get about 10 of those, well, I'm all right. I'm not really satisfied, but it's enough to continue with it. See the point? So that's how it is. And the other thing you realize about satisfaction in this material society we live in is that the children are picking it up quite fast. When we were young, I think most of us had this idea that mother and father would tell us, be happy with what you have, good enough. Today, we want to give our children the best. So we feed their desires, and we don't realize that. So we give them one toy, and we think that's enough. But now, the child is bombarded. He goes to school, he sees a friend with a better toy, he comes back, he has to communicate it with you, and you need to get him something else. Nobody is satisfied with a want. And that's the problem here. The word is want. So that's the question we need to ask ourselves. That in the society we live in, becoming satisfied and staying satisfied is difficult. We all are satisfied, like for about a minute. And then after that, how do we sustain that? That's the challenge. Okay, next question is, what does the Bhagavad Gita have to say about that? The Gita, right, maybe 10, 15 years ago, was not really considered to be a very relevant scripture. Today, if you move around business circles, legal circles, management circles, it's surprising and amazing how much even non-Hindus have taken up the philosophy of the Gita. There was a time when we were afraid to mention it in business circles. Oh, I got this principle from the Bhagavad Gita. But today, when I teach at the French business school every year, and I teach commercial law, international law. I also do an entire course on Hinduism, and part of it is on the Bhagavad Gita. And I have French professors sitting down with me and telling me about the Bhagavad Gita, telling me about concepts of activity, work, duty, and how useful it is, and how they want to apply it here and there. And it really encourages me, because we must appreciate what we have. That is also the source of satisfaction, when you appreciate what you already have. So the Gita is an amazing source to understanding what is true satisfaction. And the whole idea in the Gita is not that you get more is good and less is bad, but in the Gita it's the opposite. Generally, if I can put it down very simply, it's less is more. Very interesting point. Less is more. Sometimes our minds, start thinking, I'm going to resist this. I can see it in some of your faces. But never mind. The mind always says, how can less be more? But the Gita says less is more. Why? In the Gita, which is very important, Krishna starts by telling Arjuna that you need to understand that in this world, there are three very strong enemies. Lust, anger, and greed. Okay? So Krishna says that these three enemies are actually the gates to hellish existence. In other words, they can give you a very difficult time. If you look at lust, lust is not just about physical lust. That's the idea very often people get when they read the Gita. But Krishna goes deeper than that. He says lust simply means desires. That's all. Every time we have a want, and we feel that the want has to be satisfied, lust has already appeared in our hearts. That's what the Gita says. Arjuna, if you remember the Gita, did not want to fight, correct? He stood in the middle of the battlefield, he saw all his cousins on the other side, and he said, I do not want to fight. Then Krishna turned around and told him, I don't want you to fight. I need you to fight. And at that point of time, Krishna starts the whole Bhagavad Gita. So the entire Bhagavad Gita is really about one thing. Why Arjuna needs to fight and not want to fight. So the whole point of satisfaction is revolving between these two words. Wanting and needing. As long as Arjuna wanted to fight, he was confused. He lost his composure. He became weak. Put down his bow and arrow and decided, I am not going to fight. And he gave very favorable arguments to support his want. And we do that too, isn't it? When we want to buy a new car, and if the wife or the husband opposes, we plan, go see the dealer first, work out the mathematics, and we know we have it right, then we sit down with our significant other, and we spend the next 2-3 days trying to convince them why this is going to work out. And that's what Arjuna tried to do with Krishna. He gave all his arguments why I want not to fight. And at the end of it, the second chapter, Krishna says, yeah, fine. You have reasons, they are good, but they are based on your desire. On your desire. So lust is desire. Where there is lust, Krishna says, two things will come. One is anger, and the other is greed. The problem with desire is that it is always, almost always related to matter and not spirit. Everything around us is matter. We are all enveloped by matter. But we also realize today that we have such a thing called consciousness, isn't it? In some circles we call consciousness the soul. In other circles we just refer to it as consciousness. But we know that at the point of death, what happens to consciousness? It leaves the body. And that is why we don't care so much for the body. We treat it with respect, but after death it's over. We don't stay around. So consciousness is a very powerful factor. And consciousness means that which is not matter. So Krishna is trying to tell Arjuna that if you understand that your desire is based on something that you want, which is material in nature, it will cause you agitation. And now he gives a very nice point. He says that if you were to fulfill a desire in this world, and the desire is material, in fulfilling the desire, something will happen to you. You will actually have a hankering or greed for more fulfillment. Think about it. In this world, we say, I'll just buy this and I'll stop with that. But you and I know it never happens. We just continue with it. And then we just find reasons to convince ourselves. And when we can't get something, which is the other point, when something that is building up in our hearts as a desire, when that cannot be fulfilled, then two cousins come out. One is anger, and if you're not totally angry, then the other lesser cousin, equally disturbing, is frustration. So when you cannot fulfill a desire or a want, you get either frustrated, anxious, or disturbed. Sometimes it comes out as full-blown anger. But if you fulfill it and say, well, by fulfilling I'll be happy, now it catches us in the other way. Because in trying to fulfill your desire, you increase your anger. Sometimes the Bhagavad Gita uses the word greed. But sometimes I don't use the word greed with assemblies, because I remember one time I used the word greed, and after one gentleman came up and said, I'm very insulted by you. I said, why? What did I say? You accused me of being greedy. And I thought, okay, let's not use the word greed. Let's use the word hankering. That's a lot more sophisticated and a lot more easier to deal with. But Krishna is uncompromising. He says, Arjuna, if you have a desire, you will have anger and you will have greed. And therefore, these three, lust, anger, and greed, they are the greatest impediments to your satisfaction. If you get rid of anger and if you get rid of greed, then Arjuna, whatever that you perform, it will not be based on desire. It will be based on duty, a sense of need, rather than just a sense of want. So that's what the Gita is trying to tell us. So the Gita says 2 points. So let's break them up now just for a few minutes so we can understand them. The Gita talks about greed, which we will talk about in 2 minutes. But before that, the Gita talks about anger and frustration. And this is very important because when we want to be satisfied, the last thing we want to be is to be frustrated. It definitely stops us from being satisfied. But in order for us to understand that, Krishna gives us a very nice idea. We will not be able to understand what satisfaction really is until we appreciate the nature of this world. That's the first thing the Gita tells us. Try to appreciate the nature of the world. It's very simple. Supposing I need to work with someone, right? Suman, Prabhu and myself, we work together. If you're really intelligent, the first thing you'll try to do, whether you're in business or any venture that you're taking up, is try and understand the nature of the person you're working with. Because if you understand your business partner, or you understand your life partner, if you understand anyone that you're working with, and by understanding I mean their natures, if you really appreciate them for who they are, then what happens? First, you start working with them a lot better, isn't it so? And second, you find you know the way to become either satisfied from the endeavor with them and also how to satisfy them. And that is what we do in the jobs. That's what we do with our colleagues. That's what we try and do with our employees. That's what I try to do with the judge in the court. We need to try and understand their nature. Last week, I got into court in the morning. I said, "Good morning, Your Honor." And the judge looked at me and he said, "What is so good about this morning?" And I thought, this is going to be a bad morning. This judge has a reputation for waking up on the wrong side of the bed, which is almost always. So I said, "Your Honor, I just meant it as a term of courtesy." And he said, "So you don't mean it?" And I said, "It's not that I don't mean it, but I was hoping that you'd have a good morning." And then he says, "But I didn't, so why would you say it?" And I just say, "Because I didn't know you didn't have a good morning. We spent 15 minutes on good morning until it definitely was not a good morning." And that day the judge gave me a torrid time. But because I understood that this judge and his nature is such that he is difficult, I could get on and I could try to satisfy him, and eventually I could satisfy my client. And because they were both satisfied, I became very satisfied. So understanding and appreciating the nature of something is important. And Krishna says, you have to understand the nature of this world, Arjuna. Then you will understand why and how to become satisfied. And what is the nature of this world? It's very straightforward. Krishna tells us that the first thing, the only thing you need to remember as you go back home today is, the nature of this world is nothing will last forever. Everything is temporary by nature. And the big problem here is this: while we expect that satisfaction must be forever, or we expect things in this world to be in a certain way for a long time, that goes against the very grain of the nature of this world. Imagine you try to find happiness in a place where happiness is temporary. Your quest for happiness, which is temporary, will give you a reduced expectation. But if your quest is for a happiness that is permanent, in a temporary world, you will become miserable. This is what we have to remember. I remember a very, very learned, saintly personality telling me, "You know what's the good news about staying in this world? While your happiness is temporary, thank God your miseries are also temporary." So even while you have happiness and you think it's gone, and then the miseries are coming, the good news is, because nothing really lasts, they also have a way of going. And that is true. And that's why Krishna told Arjuna, a man who understands that the nature of this world is that happiness and desire and sadness are like waves of the ocean. They are incessant, and they flow with your desires, and they never end. So a man who wants to jump into the water just by the edge of a shore, if he waits and waits and says, "I will only jump when the waves stop," then he will never jump. Correct? And he's not understood to be very intelligent. So the Gita says, you cannot wait for happiness to come and sadness to stop, because they take turns. And they come very often based on your own actions, whether in the past, or whether in the present, or that which determines your future. either way, one cannot escape the temporary nature of this world. That's the first thing Krishna tells Arjuna. That's why the first key word in satisfaction from the Gita is acceptance as opposed to expectation. When you expect something from someone in this world, almost always they fall short of it. Because we have very high standards. But we forget that when the roles are reversed, we expect, hey, don't have so high standards. Try to understand me a bit more. And that's why we're never satisfied. It's very difficult. But if we learn to accept people for who they are, and if you extend it, if you learn to accept situations that come to you as they are, then you find innately you are not satisfying your desires, but you're accepting the nature of the world. And in that acceptance comes a deep degree of satisfaction. Think about it. So that's the first point that Krishna speaks about as far as anger and lusting and desiring for one's are concerned. That we understand this point about the nature of the world. The other thing that he says is, once you understand that the nature of the world is temporary, then you also understand that if we are dictated by desires in this world, then uncontrolled desires are always leading us to uncontrolled mind. And uncontrolled mind leads us to uncontrolled desires. The real troublesome factor that stops us from being satisfied is a demanding mind. The mind, is a reservoir of desires. And it's very hard to control the mind. If I told all of you now, for 5 seconds, don't think of elephants. Okay, we just thought of elephants. It's very difficult to control the mind. And mind's nature is that whatever you want it to do, it tends to give you an alternative. If you say this is a good thing to do, the mind will say, what do you mean good? There are other ways to do it. If you say, let's do the right thing, at the corner of your mind, the mind will tell you, well, this is also right. Or something in your heart tells you, no, it's not right. But the mind says, no, this is why it's right. Mind is very powerful. Very, very powerful. And this point is very important. You know Alexander the Great. It's a historical fact. One of the great conquerors of the world. And he came to India. And he wanted to meet a very famous saintly personality who was sitting in an ashram under a tree. And Alexander sent his messengers to say, please pull him here because he needs to answer to me. I want him to come before me. I am the emperor of the known world. And the sage who heard that, most people would jump at the idea of meeting Alexander the Great. But the sage thought, well, he's Alexander, but he's not so great. So what I'm going to do is, let me just continue where I am. I'm quite satisfied. I don't really need to see him. So Alexander became quite curious. What does he do? He travels across and he comes to the little place where this sage is seated. Thank you. And then he bows before the sage and he says, I have called for you to come. Why did you not come? And the sage said, I did not come or I did not answer to anyone because I am very satisfied where I am. And as it is, I only answer to that Lord and Master of all the senses in the world. Alexander didn't know what he was saying. He said, Master and Lord, that's me. Because I've conquered the whole world. There's nothing left to conquer. And the sage said, well, I'm not interested in meeting you. Alexander became very upset. And he started ranting and raving. And after all the ranting and raving, when he stopped, the sage looked very peaceful. So Alexander got a bit tired. And he said, can I ask you why you are not reacting to my ranting and raving? Do you know I could have you killed? And the sage smiled at him and told him, this is the reason why I did not come to see you. Because I realized that while you think you have conquered the whole world, you have not conquered your mind. Your mind could not accept that someone, anyone, would not be able to bow to you. And you have become a servant of your anger, your lust, and your greed. And having said that, Alexander, this is a recorded historical journal. Alexander writes, he says, or it is written by the author, that Alexander was completely shocked. And he went back that night, very, 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 very contemplative. And at the end of that, he sat down with his ministers and he told them that when my time comes, I want 3 wishes to be granted. And they asked, what are they? He said, first, make sure that all the doctors who try very hard to save my life at the end, because I will have many doctors, I am the king, I am the emperor, but they will fail because I have to die. Do one thing, let them be the pallbearers of my coffin. Fair enough. Second wish, do one thing. When I am being brought out on the street on a ceremonial procession, put out my finger, put out my hands. Make sure my palms are open so that the whole world can see them. Third, whatever beautiful and valuable coins that I have gotten from all over the world, the conquered world, throw them, have them strewn on the streets. Let everyone look at them. So one wise minister asked him, Alexander, why all these? What happened? And he said, I met a personality this morning who just made me understand that while I have conquered the whole world, I have not conquered my desire. And that is why even as I stay here, I'm still thinking, I need more. I need more. And in all my conquests, I have never stopped to take a moment and be thankful for what I have already conquered. I would conquer it, leave it, the empire would crumble, but in my mind I would just say, well, I conquered it. The reality was, did I ever enjoy it? Did I enjoy it because I was satisfied with it? No. So the ministers then asked Alexander, but why these 3 requests? And he says, the first is to make everyone understand that I have understood that factually speaking, even if I have everything that I have ever wanted, at the point of my death, or at the point when I leave this body, I take nothing with me. And the best doctors in the whole world, they can only just help me prolong maybe for a while, but ultimately I have to leave. So let them be my pallbearers. Let people understand that this is the nature of the world. The second reason why I've asked that my hands be put out and my palms be open is more intriguing. Because he said, let everyone understand that while I conquered the known world and I have so much riches, I leave with nothing. Nothing. And now I realize that I also came with nothing. So in between whatever I have, I should be happy with what I have, what I possess. I don't know whether I have enough time for that. And the third, he said, all these coins that I got from all over the world, throw it down. Because that's how much value they will have at the end of my life. And then he adds something which I like personally. He said, but do you know something? Do you know that even after throwing all the coins down, and after telling everyone why Alexander the Great did this, you can be assured the public would hear it all, and then pick up all the coins, put them in their pockets, and say, you know what? Should have got more. Should have got more. And this is the nature of the world. Such a simple point, but if we understand it the way the Gita gives it, it's a step towards greater satisfaction. Now that we've looked at lust, we've looked at anger, we've looked at the nature of this world, the frustration, the next point we have to understand is the word greed. Greed is a powerful animal. There was a scholar who said that greed is like a fat monster with a small mouth. Fat monster with a small mouth. Why? Because no matter how much you put in, greed is that wonderful instrument that tells you it's not enough. How many times you have been in a relationship with someone whom you love? You try so much to satisfy them. I buy you this for Diwali, I buy you that, got you something new. And every year, at some point, you must find fault with me. Forget the job. I'm talking just basic husband-wife relationship. Isn't it? It's always there. The fact is, in any relationship, very few of us are really satisfied. And those who are satisfied, they are considered gifted. Because it's a rarity. It's a rarity. So the point is that when we have this hankering, it is because we want something. And when we don't get it, then we become frustrated. But if we get it, we say, give me more, give me more. And all the consequences and difficulties and ills of society, at least from a legal point of view, is largely because of greed or hankering. Credit card debts, we have a lot of that, right? We keep suing people all the time. And whenever we serve writ of summons on them, bring them to court, judgment, bankruptcy. That's when we ask them simple question, why? Why did you spend more than you earned? And they say, well, because I wanted more. It just comes down to that, nothing else. Corruption in society. We've seen greed affect marriages because it breaks down communications. People feel used. I'm only in a relationship based on what I can get from you and what you can give me. And that is the basis of hankering. So greed is very powerful. And Mahatma Gandhi said very nicely that there is enough in this land for every man. Every man's need, this earth has enough. But this earth has not enough, does not have anything for every man's greed. Very powerful statement. For every man's greed, this earth is not enough. But for every man's need, this earth is very sufficient. Have you heard of this personality known as Vamandev? He is an avatar of Lord Vishnu, a small dwarf boy who takes 3 steps. And he takes 3 steps of length. I will not. Amazing point. Amazing point. If you really think of what he says. He says, because no matter what you give me, there will always be discontent. And I will always ask for more if I'm not satisfied with what I have. And at the end of that, Bali Maharaj is told by Vamandev that please remember one thing. For someone who has uncontrolled senses and uncontrolled mind, then 3 steps of land will never be enough, neither will the 3 worlds be enough. So given all that, my dear Bali, it's better for me just to have 3 steps of land. That's enough. So what Vamandev tells us here is very important. There are 2 things, besides lust, anger and greed, that run parallel and that also cause trouble when we want to be satisfied. The first is uncontrolled desires and uncontrolled wants. When there is no sense of being able to control what we want, when what we want becomes more important than what we need, that's the time satisfaction is very difficult to attain. But when we become satisfied with what has come to us, if we are grateful for it and we are thankful for it, then we begin to become a lot more satisfied in life. So that's the point of uncontrolled desires. And the other point that's very important that Vamandev has brought up to us is that in the end, in this world, whatever that we have actually doesn't really belong to us forever. Have you noticed how it comes on borrowed time and how it leaves on borrowed time? It doesn't last. So for a while it's there, and after a while it goes. So Krishna gives us what we call the platform, the train platform mentality. Most of us have been in India. If you stand on the platform waiting for one train and the other train, you know what platforms are. What happens is, while you wait on a platform, you could meet another passenger, isn't it? And sometimes if your train is delayed, you sit down, talk to each other. After a while, you seem like you know each other for years. And you exchange information, exchange everything, exchange numbers. But when your train comes, you don't tell the stranger whom you just met, you know what, let's skip the trains, let's get married. Doesn't happen like that. You just move on because you know that when you are with a person, you are on borrowed time. And when you're with a property or an acquisition, you're also on borrowed time. If we appreciate that, then instead of misusing what we have, we use it for a higher cause. And when we use it for a higher cause, like giving back or helping someone who doesn't have it, that really gives us the greatest sense of satisfaction. That is very important. So, to conclude, if you hear all these points that the Gita has given, something comes out from all this, practically speaking. Krishna is telling us that we all have needs and we all have wants. If we can identify what we really need, then we'll know what we really want. If you can identify what are the things you want and don't really need, that would be a first step towards trying to understand this point of satisfaction. Many things in this world we don't really need. And by running after that, it doesn't mean we will become happy. Sometimes people feel, hey, the chase is better than the goal. You heard of that, right? Duke Orsino, 12th Night, Shakespeare. He says, if music be the food of love, then play on. Duke Orsino fell in love with Viola, and he was just running after her. When he finally got her, he says, you know what, the chase was better. And why? Because he was driven by uncontrolled want. If it was a need, then automatically your mind becomes more controlled. You become more disciplined. You also become more responsible because you know this is a need, it's needed, I will work hard and I will try to get it. So needs, the Bhagavad Gita says, they automatically help us to control our minds. Somebody asked me this question when I gave a lecture last on this topic. But how will I know? How will I know? Very simple. Test it. When you want something and it disturbs you, it's a want. When you need something and you work towards it, you try to achieve it, and you still don't get it, it's most often a need. And if you don't get it and you become dissatisfied, then the Gita goes one step further to say, if you try very, very, very hard, and I'm sure we've all been there, there's this good contract deal and we're really about to finish it, and all of a sudden everything goes south. Why? The Gita says, take it one step further. If we are really in control of everything we ever did in the world, then there's no need to talk about satisfaction because we'll always be satisfied. We can control everything, isn't it? This is the final point that the Gita gives. Krishna gives to Arjuna. Arjuna, what can you control? What is in your hands? You came without any clothes. You will leave without any clothes. In between you have something. But if you understand that what you have is coming from your Creator, then what happens? Then you learn to live with a bit more appreciation. You learn to appreciate what you have. And if something after a great amount of effort doesn't come into your hands, you understand that even though I wanted it very much or needed it very much, it was not meant to be. Why? Because it is His arrangement, the Creator's arrangement. That's why I want to end by telling you one beautiful verse in the Gita I always like. And I also, before that, want to tell you what happened to me when I was very young. My mother is a teacher. And if any one of you are teachers, don't put your children in the same school as you do. Okay, it's very bad for the child. Traumatic, I can tell you that. Because the expectations of you doing well, because you have a teacher for a mother, it's terrible. So I was in primary 1, and I was second in class, and I had 99.7%, which you must admit, please tell me it's good. Right, it's not bad. The boy who was first had 100%. How can I control that? My mother walks back home and tells me I'm very disappointed, very angry. Second in class, everyone's telling me, teacher's son, second in class, what happened to you? And I felt really bad. So I went to sleep, really dissatisfied, really disillusioned. Now my father creeps in, making sure my mother doesn't see him. In my house, my mother is Prime Minister, Finance Minister, Home Affairs Minister, and my father's President. Okay, so if you're in Singapore and you know the President's powers and Prime Minister's powers, you get the idea of how it is. So my father walks in very carefully and he sits down with me and says, Siva, don't be so discouraged. I said, no, I mean, Mother said I wasn't so good. And he said, I'll tell you one thing that's really important. The question you have to ask is, when you tried to study, did you give it your best shot? I said, how will I know? He said, if you look inside, touch your heart, if you pray, you can't hide from it, you will know. And then he said, if you know you've tried your best, then the result is coming in your hands. You should have the good conscience to know you have done your duty. And in that way, you should have more faith in your Creator. If you have not done your best, then don't blame Mother, because she's probably right. If you want to know the answer was number 2. I knew I didn't put in my best effort. But since then, I learned something very important, which years later I realized was from the Gita. Krishna tells Arjuna to fight. He tells him to perform a duty because it was needed in the context of that time. We are all workers, professionals. The question people always ask me is, if you became satisfied with your job, won't you become complacent? Won't we set marked improvements? How do we improve? The answer is in the Gita. Because Krishna tells Arjuna, hey, don't run into a cave and become sadhu. No. You have a duty, give it your best shot. It is your duty to fight as a warrior, and if you win the kingdom, enjoy it. Flourish it. That's what he says, 11:33 of the Gita. But he says something else. But just understand one thing, Arjuna. By my arrangements, those who are going to lose on the battlefield, they have lost. And those who are going to win, they will win. Then you may ask yourself, if everything is determined in that way, then what is my role? And he gives a nice answer at the end. You become my instrument. Be an instrument in my hand and do your best. Whatever you have, you offer it. Offer it to me. Offer it back to society. And that is why the best source of satisfaction, finally, is when we get ones, because we can't run away from ones, we channel them. Whatever that's needed for us, we may keep. Whatever that goes excess, and you know what is excess, we all know what will be more than what we need, take them and give it back. Serve society. Serve a higher cause. Serve a noble cause. And most important, give thanks to the Creator who gave you this. So satisfaction, in conclusion, is inner fulfillment. You cannot find it outside. You try being satisfied by other people, oh, I tell you, it is a route that will leave you frustrated. It also will give you the opportunity to become blissful. And there's a difference between bliss and happiness. That is why our ancestors and our elders and our wise scriptures, they always said, 3 things in this world we should always be satisfied with. Right? Anyone knows which are the 3? I think Swayam Prakash knows. Prabhu, you want to tell me? First thing that we must be satisfied with.
One's wife or husband.
Okay, one's wife or husband. That's a good way to start being satisfied with. Yes. Second?
No food we get.
Yes. Whatever that's on the table. How much do we really need to eat? And how much do we really need as a bed to sleep on? Our necessities are actually very little. And the more we become simple in our existence, you find the more satisfaction there is in our lives. Otherwise, excess baggage is always difficult, whether you bought a plane or you bought a train. Isn't it true? Very difficult. It's a big headache. And what's the third? Whatever? Yes. Whatever wealth that we possess, whatever that has come to us, start smelling the roses, as they say. Sometimes we rush after something and we forget to smell the roses. We should take a break and understand, this is good. Let me be thankful for it. And then there are 3 things that the scriptures tell us we should never be satisfied with. This is an odd way to end it, isn't it? We just talk about satisfaction. I'm going to tell you 3 things you should never be satisfied with. What's the first thing?
Study of scriptures.
We should never be satisfied with the study of scriptures. Sometimes we say, you know what, I read the Gita once in 2 years. I'm very, very regular. But if you read the Gita every day, the kind of understanding of who you are as a person and what the world is around you is so greatly enhanced. So that's one thing we should never be satisfied with. The second thing we should never be satisfied with is to actually chant the names of our Creator. When you see the Christians, you see the Muslims, every religion has always had this very practical way that transcendental vibrations are different from material vibrations. I always tell the students in NUS, chant with me Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola for 20 minutes. You'll throw me out. But try chanting the sweet names of the Lord and you'll find, hey, this is good. There's something beautiful about it. So that's something we should never be satisfied with. And the third thing that we should never be satisfied with, charity. The art of giving. Because when you give for a higher cause, that sacrifice, that austerity, that actually gives you satisfaction which cannot be described in material terms. So I want to wish you all the best. I hope that this will be useful. I know I've exceeded my time. You all must be hungry. Some of you look that. But I just hope that whatever that I've shared with you is always open for discussion, for thinking, for disagreements. We didn't bring you all here to brainwash you. I don't think that was Suman's intention at all. But we thought that if we could share this with you, it would be useful. Do you know it's also stated in our scriptures that one way to overcome greed is to discuss the disadvantages of accumulating wealth. I like that. One way to overcome greed is to discuss the disadvantages of accumulating wealth. If you understand the disadvantages, then you accumulate it for a higher cause. So we're not saying that greed is wrong, desire is wrong. It's where you channel it that's very important. We want a higher order of living, and we want to come out of this constant state of anxiety, frustration, and difficulty. Thank you very much. So what happens now?
We have some time and we'll get the food in a moment. We have some questions, comments, observations, thoughts. Very nice to hear.
Yes, please.
My name is Ray. During the talk, you also mentioned uncontrolled desire to not be there.
Yes,
At the
sir.
same time, okay, my feeling or the path I follow it says desire is required to give us a direction, but there should not be a desperation. Desire is good, but desperation is not good. As long as there is a desire, it gives us a focus, gives us a direction to go towards. But it should not be desperate for the course. Maybe to desire something, you give your best effort, but don't be desperate for it.
Actually, we just spoke the same thing. We've just used different languages to say the same thing. What you mean by desire, the Gita tends to use the word that everyone has desires, we cannot be desireless, but like you said, it's how much we want to fulfill it. If we fulfill it to the point where we are desperate for it and we are greedy for it and there's no other life except for the fulfillment of that, then it is disturbing. But if we have a desire and we want to try and see whether we can fulfill it, and having tried it, if it doesn't happen, and we are satisfied with what comes from that attempt, then that gives us some level of satisfaction. So the semantics may be different, but the principle is the same. Excess of anything in that sense is always going to cause a bit of disturbance. And overdose of desires can lead to a lot of difficulty. The Gita says that is true. And desperation comes because we don't have a goal. We are actually, you realize something about living in this world? Our goal of existence tends to be very material. It's here and now. But the scriptures tell us that the goal of life should be self-realization and not sense gratification. If we realize who we are, or we try to realize who we are, what is the purpose of our existence? Or if we try to make sense of our existence so that we serve others with what we have, then you'll find life becomes a lot more purposeful. But if it's just as you say, out of desperation, we try to gratify our senses all the time, or for a substantial amount of time, then you'll find that no matter how well you're doing in whatever field you may be, there'll always be the sense of, okay, I'm there, but I'm still really not completely satisfied. There's something missing. Maybe I should do this, maybe I should do that. And it ends up that we go around in circles and circles and circles. It's good to pull the brakes and know where we're driving. You know, which street is it? You know, how far are we going to go? That's what the Gita is asking. Gita doesn't tell us to stop what we're doing. But the Gita says as we drive along, at least know where we're driving to. Thank you, Suresh. That's a good point. Were you here the last time in April? This is your first time? What is it that I've seen you somewhere? You will check.
Into the center.
Oh, okay, fine. Yeah, you look very good. Thank you. Yes.
Just around the practicality of implementation. I've been on this path for the last almost 2 years. I've been scratching the surface of the spiritual path. One thing that I constantly notice is that, more in terms of your family, what happens is that you start off your journey with your spouse, as a particular person, and when you go on to the spiritual path, suddenly you are controlling your desires and you're changing, as yourself, right? And then you notice this, that obviously your other half is expecting you to be a she got into the relation because you were a particular person.
I know, I didn't sign up for this.
Exactly. and now on a day-to-day basis, you somewhere you see that now. First is that there's a constant fear that as soon as somebody takes a spiritual path, he's going to be a swami, and
I know.
and so that's one underlying fear which nobody will mention upfront, but you know that that's there at the back of your mind. So in the morning when I announce that I'm going for this lecture,
Is she panic?
not panic, but you know that feeling is there. That means they're not very comfortable. That's one. And second is this, and when you control your desires, etc., in your professional, etc. life, you're operating differently.
Yes.
It's maybe not with the same pace and ambition,
Yes.
etc. that probably was maybe a couple of years back. There's a different purpose.
Yes.
Right? Which your family members might not completely appreciate. Right.
That's true.
So, from a practical viewpoint, I mean, how do you, and I don't want to obviously force her into something, or I never ask her.
Yeah, then you come and see me. And you don't want to come and see me for that.
So,
I see you. Your name?
I thought Vipul, sir.
Vipul, right?
Yeah.
Vipul, we just met just now. Yeah, okay, fine. Vipul's question is very practical. Because very often, I think a lot of individuals who suddenly start questioning their lives or the direction of it, or who take this path up a little bit more seriously, they find that suddenly they are out of tangent with those around them. And we have so many cases where devotees come and tell us it's very challenging. We got married and we were on the same level. We had the same objective 10 years ago, and now all of a sudden, he's dropping all his expectations. He's ending up sitting down in the temple often. He's breaking a lot of coconuts, and he's chanting all these funny mantras. What do we do? I can't handle it. Very important is, I always speak to such devotees and I tell them the most important thing is, if we are really genuine about trying to reduce our wants, then we should also be genuine in trying to serve those who are around us. The service that we try to do should not only be to ourselves or to society, but they have this term, charity begins at home, isn't it? So sometimes it's not always easy for our significant other, which is the closest relationship that we have, to understand and appreciate. Which is why I always suggest that the best way for us to work this through is actually to take baby steps. If you find that your partner somehow or another has a difference of opinion about your way of living, then what is very important is to communicate. I find that the more couples communicate in this matter, the more they try and understand each other's needs and wants, then both of them start coming to a middle road. So that we don't have someone going off renegade on this side, and we don't have someone saying, what's the point of taking all this up when you can't give your own family satisfaction? Something must be wrong. But the whole idea is not to put a gun to anyone's head. That's why I would strongly urge you, Vipul, this is a very practical point that you brought up. The truth is, it's always good for us to understand things the way we can in our hearts, but to always be sensitive to our surroundings. But the Gita has another very good thing to offer. Krishna tells Arjuna in the Gita that if you are truly devoted to this cause and truly devoted to my service, and if you're really sincere, then Krishna says, I, who am living in the hearts of everyone as the silent witness, I will give you the intelligence, as I will give others the intelligence to come back to me, to come to understand the purpose of my existence. Practically translated, it just means that if you perform your devotion and your service as sincerely as you can, without disrupting what your family has in mind, and when it does come to a point of disruption, you communicate and you're willing to give and take, which are all qualities of a satisfied personality, this goodwill that you generate in your family will eventually make things a lot easier between two people. I've seen this happen many times, but it takes time. My wife is a good example, because when I signed up with my wife, we were 18 years old. I met her in college, and at that time I was very involved in all this. She wasn't so much, but she thought after getting married, things would just be like every normal person. All of a sudden she gets married, and suddenly I'm traveling and have this and have that. So one day, she gets very upset, and she talks to my spiritual master, and she says, "This is not the way." And he sits down with me and he says, "This is not the way." And he says that if you want to satisfy someone, if you want to make sure that you are serious about your life and you do not impact on other people, you first be the best person you can be. But do not expect that from the person next to you. That expectation doesn't lead to satisfaction to anyone, but an acceptance of who that person is. The broad-minded nature, the broad-hearted nature, that will eventually win their hearts. It is a slightly longer process, but it is very satisfying, if I may say so. Does that help, I hope?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. That's useful. Okay. I think you're all hungry. We can chat as we move around, But it's a Saturday afternoon. You could be anywhere else. But you've taken your time and trouble to come here. We really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. And if I've said something which is offensive or which is objectionable, then please excuse me and speak to the organizers. They framed the question anyway. I'm just speaking. But really, I want to thank the organizers. Suman, Vishal, Sanjay, Swami Prakash, they've all taken so much trouble to call all of you together. And I want to wish you all the best. The moment you start thinking apart from yourself, and the moment you start thinking that there's a world out there, and you start appreciating the nature of the world, that day your quest for true happiness begins. But if you just sit where we are and say, you know what, this is all good talk, but what's the point? Then your exercise of being here and my exercise of being here will be what we want to avoid, and that is the ritual. We all ran away from rituals, isn't it, when we were young? Many people told us to believe in God. When we saw all these ceremonies, we thought, why? So much rituals, no meaning. We come from a generation where we want to be convinced. You're all intelligent. You're all at the cut and thrust of your industries. Use the intelligence. And if you use it well, then the Creator will reciprocate. And you will find the satisfaction is not elusive. But if you start depending on everything which is material, and you do not understand who you are, then it will be very difficult. That's why when two persons on the journey or on the path of satisfaction meet each other, they never use the word, what's the matter? We're not concerned with matter. So we don't say, what's the matter? We ask each other, how are we doing in life? Is there something we can do to improve ourselves? Is there something we can do to increase our satisfaction? Right? And by depending on others and external forces for satisfaction, you will never be happy. I think you know it by now. Let me end on a high so you all smile before you go. This wife took care of her husband for 20 years. Mother long fallen out of the picture because husband and wife living together. One day wife decides, I'm going to ask my husband something. Cooks him a good meal, sits him down and says, I have a scenario for you. In this ocean, I'm drowning. Your mother is also there. She's also drowning. You're the only one who can swim. Who will you save first? This is a killer question, isn't it? It's a killer question. It's a question no husband wants to hear. Secretly, we always hope to avoid this question. But this husband was very cool. He said, no issues at all, I'll save my mother. Wife says, 20 years I cooked for this man, served him well, gave up my job, took care of the kids, everything. And this is what he tells me. So she says, why? Why will you save her? And he's very cool about this also. He says, because in my life you can only get one mother. Now she's very upset. She can't sleep. Next morning she goes to her workplace. She meets a colleague. She says, "Can you imagine this man? Yesterday I talked to him. I've been with him all these years, thick and thin, and this is the answer he gives me. What do you think I should do?" And the friend very coolly says, "Very simple. Learn how to swim."
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was, I hope everybody found it very useful. I think Rohit was just covering on touching on some of the topics. It's a very it was just giving a what do you say, curtain raiser to what the scriptures have to offer us, right? I mean, I think thank you very much.
Thanks.
Very nicely encapsulated. I was captivated even though I heard some of these things before. The way you put it was very nice. So we are getting the food. It's almost here. So just give us.
So we're getting warm sandwiches. We can, what we are getting, please start giving. Otherwise, it will get cold.
It's got some falafel and stuff like that. So what the caterer told me that it needs to be had warm, not hot. So I'll just spend a minute. So many of you would have received this from the mail for ID from Artha forum. So Rajiv is here. He's a very dear friend of ours, and he's a very successful business person. He runs a private equity firm called Vassal Partners, and Artha forum is kind of an online forum to create and allow these kind of seminars all over the world. I think we just had some seminars in Princeton, was it Rajiv? And in Mumbai, etc. Even we had that one that we had here, and now this is the second one. So he's been very kind to sort of help us organize these forums, and we hope we can have some more of these continually in Singapore. Do you want to kind of speak for a minute or something?
Basically, there's one coming up on the 9th of November. That's in Singapore. We have two events at Silicon Valley. We have one at Princeton. We have two in Mumbai, and we thought, we're very happy to share that a lot of entrepreneurs are taking, Vedic wisdom from, from the speakers and, implementing it in their day-to-day lives, into their own businesses, and it all is happening naturally. So there is, Vedic wisdom being disseminated and very nicely invited, because in Silicon Valley there are some such events. And we also have one in Eco Village. It's a very beautiful setting on the 9th to 11th of Jan 2015. Many of these people ranging from Damodar Reddy, who's first Indian to visit the semiconductor company of Mumbai. I have personally been a witness to see how this man, who is 74 years old, extremely successful in Silicon Valley, and how in the last 15 months, he's literally imbibing Vedic knowledge, has made a big difference to how he looks at life. He's doing, all these entrepreneurs are, incorporating charity in their business models. They are being deeply touched, and, it's the same activity, but, being done with a different, consciousness. So many of these people, Sanjay Naratha, the CEO of Families is coming, Sushant Patnaik, quite a few people from the business world in the West, as well as Ajay Piramal was at our last function in the Artha event in Mumbai. So all of these people will be gathering together. There is unfortunately only scope for 100 people to come and stay there. So this event is going to be held from the 9th to 11th at Govardhan Eco Village. We invite any of you to come spend time with many speakers at one location spread over 3 days. The next one, of course, is here on the 9th of November. If you send us your email, we'll be happy to give you the venue in Singapore. A wonderful speaker is going to be present, and we will also have a panel discussion with some other local speakers, all aimed at taking Vedic wisdom into our day-to-day life, both in business and
So the 9th of November, we keep you posted with the dates and emails, but this time we move the date. So it's kind of pretty much, you just fix up the place, etc., the venue, depending on people. It's a kind of a moving target. You don't know how many people. Last time we had about 100 people. We had kind of thought maybe 70 or 80 at max, and there were 100, which was very good. The more the better. The more people get this knowledge for us, that's really the desire. So next one is 9th November. So do mark your diaries. It's Saturday, or maybe a Sunday. But you get the emails. So spread the word around. If you have friends who are like-minded, who would like to hear a bit about what's the other side, the broader perspective, I think it'd be very nice. The more we can reach out to people today's day, and everybody is looking for it. In our professional lives, we talk to people. We are people who came from very similar background, looking for something and imbibing it in our lives. Right. So to your point, when you're mentioning. One of the things, if I could add, is that when you take up to a process which is giving you a broader perspective, in no way compromises in what you do in terms of your work life. Because like Prabhuji said, Bhagavad Gita was spoken in the battlefield. And the way I understand it, having heard from people like Prabhuji here and many others, is that it was spoken to probably at that point the best professional in the world. Arjuna, who was the best warrior, never ever defeated, and he's suddenly, if you look at the situation, he's suddenly paralyzed for whatever reason. He can't pick up his bow and fight. That was his profession. I mean, we might find it 5,000 years back, we don't fight anymore, but that's what we do when you go to work every day, right? Or your business, whatever you do, you're really fighting out a battle. And here is a person who's kind of paralyzed. He just says that for something that he's prepared for the last 14 years, being in Agyatbas and everything else, and he just wants to, that's what he came to the battlefield for whatever reason, he doesn't want to fight. And one of the ways of looking at Bhagavad Gita is Lord Krishna spoke to him, is to inspire him to fight. Right? And that's the 700 shlokas. I mean, 592 or something spoken by Krishna, and the others are other shlokas. But he's basically telling him one of the things, and many, many things. So taking up to some form of, or having a broader spiritual perspective is no way an excuse of being lazy, if I might just put it that way. I mean, we have many, many people around, and I mean, many examples here. Rajiv himself is a very, very successful businessman. Siva Kumar here, I mean, all of us, and I have seen many, many more. In fact, if you do that properly, you probably become more effective at it. That's how I started. I thought I'm just getting too distracted and not being able to concentrate on what I do. And probably that's what I was looking for, what helps. And obviously you found a lot more in the bargain. You got to hear, you got to know a lot deeper. But that's definitely one of the things. So, not being able to deliver either on your family commitments, not being able to deliver on your professional commitments, is definitely not one of the outcomes of any of these things. Right? Of course, your life changes a bit. You get a lot more focused. You realize a lot of things that you do generally is not really taking you anywhere towards your goal of being satisfied or happy. That's fine, but it's no way an excuse to say that we don't work hard or we don't do well enough. So I think everything else is here. I was just keeping everybody busy for that. Is it there? We should start? Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.